Let me take you on a journey. What do you remember from your time at school? When you really think about it, you'll probably remember 4 or 5 things. Your favourite subject or teacher, your senior formal and a couple of key people, perhaps your first crush, your big events like your sports carnivals and your arts performance. You'll more than likely remember your school camp. But why? Our lives are shaped by moments and events. We look forward to them, we plan, we invest time and effort. Sometimes they're really difficult and challenging. We grow because of the lessons we learned. The academic approach to education is invaluable, but it's not the whole story. Real life experiences with real consequences stay with us forever and ultimately shape what we believe, how we behave, and even who we become.
I came up here to work on an overseas aid project. I had no intention of leaving Hillcrest Christian College, where I'd been there for 12 years. I was just taking a sabbatical to work on an overseas aid project. And it's just one of those things that happened. I liked it up here and I said, I'm going to stay. And at that stage I was flying and I needed to find a bit of land that was big enough to have a runway on. So we found this block of land here, and I'd always been a great believer in experiential education at my old school, and getting kids out and doing adventurous stuff, problem solving in real life situations. And I think one of the things that's important, that I had a good team around us. The early pioneers of Emu Gully was probably myself, Mark Freeman and Phil Box. And Phil was a climber, great outdoor Eddie. Mark Freeman had been on Outward Bound and was convinced of the value of these kind of programs. And together we began to forge an outdoor education centre here. And
he was really interested in education, but non-traditional education is maybe a way to say it. And so he was talking about a dream of having some sort of centre where you could educate, I guess, young people, but using different methods.
One day we had an adventure where there wasn't even the tower over the dam wasn't even built yet. And we were having tug-of-wars and all sorts of crazy adventures around the farm, and basically developed from there.
I began to see the potential of this property, and those early memories came back, and one thing led to another. The youth group came down and we built a big slide down the hill and do some things. We did some things and it was a great success, so I decided we might develop this a bit more.
Took Emu Gully Farm Ministries, we changed its name, we actually changed its constitution quite significantly to actually essentially be able to start an outdoor education centre. And so we did. There wasn't a whole lot of long-term thinking or planning, it was an idea.
You know, outdoor ed and having adventures and kids being in charge of their own destiny in these activities, and removing the teachers or the authority figures out of a group activity, and kids being in charge of how they actually run their own group activities can be absolutely liberating for young people. They're the sort of kids that grow up into becoming resilient adults that are critical thinkers, and they're independent thinkers because they can think for themselves, they can look at a situation and they can say, yeah, there's risk there, but I'm not going to die. Now, isn't that what we want to create in our kids? That's what outdoor ed helps create in our kids.
I could see that these young people, this is what these young people need. Yeah, because I was brought up on a farm where I could climb trees and I could chase kangaroos and I could swim in dams and I could do what I liked. So that was part of my education. But see, these kids don't have that. They don't have that. Yeah.
shed. So, you know, basically sausage sizzles and what have you. So, yeah, we just started small and just worked up.
We had a shed that didn't have a floor. We managed to convince actually a friend of mine to come down and help us put a concrete slab in that shed. And we actually used that in the early days as somewhere to sleep. But also we used to prepare food in there and basically serve everybody through a little servery with it actually Laurie Tate built, which was quite amazing. Yeah, well, in those early days it was all hands on deck, so we all did everything. So we facilitated groups. I'm not sure we would have used the word facilitate back then. We worked with groups. You know, we cooked for them. We talked to them. We related to them. We cleaned. It was sort of there was no demarcation lines, no clear areas of responsibility. It was sort of everybody just get in and have a go at doing whatever was needed.
Had to be just about everything in the early days. I even fixed a few toilets that got blocked. I mean, you just had to do what had to be done.
So this is our little makeshift, armoury repair station for our skirmish markers. We have a very big day coming up for our skirmish, and a couple of them broke yesterday, so we're just trying to get in and fix them this morning before the games.
Celery. Breakfast of champion, about to run skirmish.
Let's go, brother. You got 2 minutes. 2 minutes to grab that flag.
I was working for the owner of Emu Gully Farm then, Barry Rogers. I was working making windsocks in a little windsock factory we had.
I began at Emu Gully taking my grade 11 students when I was a principal in Toowoomba.
Probably my greatest memory is when you're walking down the street and someone comes up to you and says, "You're Laurie," and I'm at Emu Gully, and I'm going, "That's right." And then that triggers the memory of what it might be of that young girl where she might have been having a bit of trouble going through the tunnel or something like that, and you've just been able to be there to support them or whoever it was.
I've heard about Emu Gully as a principal in Toowoomba, and I had met Barry Rogers, who had come to our school on my invitation. And Barry had presented as an entrepreneur, as someone who had ideas. I'd never met Barry before. And then I'd heard that he was having these big picnics on a Sunday afternoon for people down at Emu Gully. And I began taking my grade 11 students when I was a principal in Toowoomba. I would take the grade 11 students down to Emu Gully back in 1996, I think. And we used to use that experience over about 2 or 3 days to kind of toughen them up for grade 12 and leadership. It was a very raw experience back in those days.
Well, at that point of time, the only facility, if you could call it a facility there, was apart from the farmhouses on that particular farm, was the dam. The dam was there with water, and there was nothing else. It was just a bare paddock, and it was plenty of room to move and plenty of room to build on and to make plans with.
Well, we didn't have a lot of equipment, and we sort of had to sort of make do with what was there. And to be honest with you, sometimes that's the best part about it, is just learning how to make do. And a lot of the people that worked there at the start were volunteers.
It was very barren. There were no accommodation. We actually all slept in an old shed, what is now the tool shed. We put the young people in there. We actually had young people sleeping on the hay. This is back in 1996, so we had a fire just a little bit away from the hay. I can't believe it. But we had a great time. Barry stood in front of the fire and told us stories under the stars.
And it was a lot of fun, and it did exactly what we wanted it to do with the young people. It began the journey of the real life and leadership. It was excellent.